Howdy folks, Donal here again. Hope you're all well. I have changed the format from the first video because looking at it back, the kids were like, Dad, why are you so grey? So that whole cave thing wasn't for me, so I'm going to give it a shot with Zoom and see if that's any better. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about FinOps, financial operations, and give an introduction as to what it is, why it is a thing, and how it's actually done at a really high level. So first off, what is FinOps, or financial operations? So within the IT space, pretty much everything has ops after it to gain consistency. So you might have heard of DevOps, DevSecOps, SecOps. I think there's AI ops and ML ops now as well. So it just kind of fits into that kind of structure of how things are spoken about. The purpose of FinOps is it kind of sits in the middle of the triangle between finance, operations, and technology. So what that involves is kind of driving collaboration across the three. So because they'll all have different competing main priorities. So for example, finance is concerned with staying on budget, having accurate forecasts. They like to see that flat line in spend that is consistent throughout, but if there is any spikes or deviations, they want to understand why. The IT team, for example, their main concern is running the application, making sure that it's got maximum uptime, reliability, security, patching, all those things are in place. So that is their number one priority. And then you might have business stakeholders in operations, such as the procurement or the sourcing organization, who are concerned with kind of maximizing the value for the company. So these three key stakeholders have very different priorities, and FinOps sits in the middle to ensure that they all effectively kind of get what they need. So from a finance perspective, FinOps would have an explanation for any material shifts in spend, and they'd be able to provide guidance on forecasting and budgeting. For the IT teams, FinOps looks at the kind of drives the reporting about transparency and what they've spent, what they spent it on, how much it's costed, how much it cost, and the optimization that might be possible. And then you can do further reporting to show how that has impacted. Sourcing and procurement, they're concerned with the buying process. You act as that gatekeeper to make sure that I suppose engineers and architects aren't running amok, doing anything crazy. And then when it comes time to negotiating with the cloud vendors, the FinOps practitioner and the sourcing and procurement people, they work closely together to, I suppose, optimize that negotiation around the commitment level, which leads to a form of discount, which again I'll cover in more detail in a later video. All that to say that FinOps is very much the middleman or middlewoman, sitting between these three, to act as kind of a guardian of the cloud spend, to make sure it's reported correctly and that we're getting the maximum value for every dollar spent in the cloud. So why we FinOps? What are the objectives? So as I touched on there, it's the first one is to gain visibility into our cloud spend. The bill that comes through from any of the cloud providers is massive. So you'll get a summarized bill, which has it broken down by service, by region, which is significant. But the data that goes behind that, the AWS example is called a CUR, a cost and usage report, is absolutely huge. Depending on the size of your environment, it could be thousands of lines wide, millions of lines long, because every time you're billed by the second for a lot of these machines, each one of those machines running is a billing line item. So it's a really big beast in terms of understanding the bill. So FinOps' job is to make sense of that spend. Who's spending it? What are they spending it on? Is it good spend in terms of, is that spend as a result of more customers or more users being supported? Or is it spend that's not so good, that our costs for running the day-to-day have gone up by 5 or 10% because of X reason? And this is something that FinOps needs to be able to delve into and explain. this ties into the allocation of costs correctly. So when you get your cloud bill, say for example, you've got 4 business units, historically you might just take your cloud bill divided by 4 business units split evenly. But that, from a technology point of view, will seldom be the case, because one business unit might have an entirely different makeup of workloads compared to another. They might use different services, different machines in different regions. And for that reason, then their charges would be significantly different. So that's why, again, FinOps has a role to play to make sure that those costs are spread according to what the usage is for each business unit. And again, there is some elements of cost that can't be split. They're shared costs, and that's something that we'll delve into further in a later video. Optimizing resource utilization. So this is a kind of key element for FinOps. So what FinOps might do is they might look at the utilization of the resources that are there within your environment, and see if there's opportunities to optimize. So is there, for example, for the infrastructure team might have what they call dev, test, and production environments. So dev and test, as the name suggests, are in development and testing, and production is the actual system that's public facing. So production, those workloads, they can't be messed around with. Dev and test, generally are worked on during the week, and like 9 to 5 or whatever the working hours are, depending on time zones. Therefore, a lot of those workloads in the cloud, they can relatively easy. I say relatively easy. I'm not technical. I can't do it. You can run a script to just shut all your cloud environment down when you're not using it. So that would be one optimization that you could look to implement. Going to a team saying, guys, you're not working the weekends, but these machines are running in this data center. Can we shut it down, and we'll save some money? So that's an example of some low-hanging fruit that's there. And it enables informed decision making. Exactly that piece. Like, could you shut stuff down? Could you move some workloads to a different region? These are all kind of optimization elements that that the infrastructure and the architecture team can take when making decisions. But until FinOps give them a dollar value for the benefits of making these decisions, they're going to keep doing what they're doing, because their number one job is keeping the system up and keeping it running. So it's up to FinOps to kind of drive that decision and give them the information to make that decision. So then, in terms of why we FinOps, in terms of the principles around it, so it's around pushing cost consciousness to the edges of the organization. Sorry, I'm in the way of the words here, but it doesn't really matter. I think it's just cloud I'm hiding. So it encourages, because every engineer or architect that's writing code relating to the cloud, every time they write a line of code, it spins up a virtual machine in a data center that you're being billed for every minute. So they're going to, and you want to kind of drive that cost consciousness piece to the edges of the organization by creating that culture of awareness, because people want to do the right thing, but they need to be informed, have the information to make the right decision. And that's what kind of FinOps is trying to do, to provide that element of visibility. You also have the accountability element of it. So by, as I mentioned in the cost allocation piece, by everyone being aware of what they're spending, they're accountable to a budget or to a kind of a run rate. And then if it varies up or down outside of that, you can have that discussion as to why that is. Is it up because of good we've takeoff of users, or is it because something has changed in the architecture? The accountability leads to transparency, so people are aware of what those changes make, what those changes have on their bill. So from a dollar perspective, also they can see that continuous improvement piece. So if FinOps comes to them with a recommendation to make an adjustment, they make the adjustment, then they see their spend reduced for that item next month. It kind of builds buy-in because they see, okay, we've got this recommendation, we took this action, we reduced this cost. So it becomes kind of that flywheel effect of that continuous improvement. Then they want to drive their spend down more by taking more initiatives. So that builds that collaboration piece. And that's exactly what you're trying to drive. So how do you actually do the FinOps piece? So a lot of these kind of tie into the points above where you're talking about your cost monitoring and optimization. So this is what your particular BU or business unit spent last month on the cloud. These are the suggestions we would have to optimize that environment, whether it be changing regions, changing machines, right sizing, looking at your storage policies, is archiving switched on, all elements that we'll go into in a further videos. But these are examples of the conversations you can have, and by having that monitoring in place, it just keeps self-fulfilling. There's budgeting and forecasting, which all finance folk will be familiar with. So everyone has a budget and they want to see how they're doing month on month, year on year. And that forecasting piece is particularly important when you're coming to your negotiation with your CSP or your cloud service provider, because that forecasted number, you're projecting out a year or 3 years out to try and get the best discount you can get in that negotiation. Resource tagging and cloud governance kind of come together. So that's where if a new engineer joins a team and they want to set up an account and spin up some virtual machines or get some cloud services, the governance needs to be in place that any activity that they have is that they perform in the cloud is tied to their whatever their relevant tag or business unit is, so that we can, you know, who to talk to when something changes in the cloud. You can see the relevant person within the business to have that discussion with. And that's kind of pretty much leveraging the cloud native tools and automation. So that's an element again that I will go into. There's AWS's Cost Explorer, Azure and GCP also have a similar type interface available where you can kind of interrogate the data as it comes in, and there is a lot of third-party tools as well. But that is enough for now. I think I've rabbited on for long enough. So any questions, anything you feel like I've not gone into enough, anything you feel like I've gone into too much, just leave a note in the comments below. I'm going to try and kind of churn these videos out, the initial ones, and then it'll be every week after that. So if you want to get, I think this is how YouTube works, like notification of when it comes out or whatever, you just hit subscribe or the bell or something like that. Cheers, thanks, bye bye.